Thomas Pynchon, The Crying of Lot 49. Very strange but very important symbol on the cover. The Crying of Lot 49 is a relatively short novel, less than 200 pages, about a woman with a very strange name who has been made the executor of this millionaire's estate. Like a man who was so amazingly wealthy that her being the executor of his will is going to take months of her life just to try to dispose of all of his acquisitions. Apparently they dated. She gets this phone call in the middle of the night informing her that he's dead and you're going to be the executor. Congratulations. Because she's going to, get some money out of this. And she tells her husband about this situation, and there's a bit of a, why did he make you the executor of his will? I mean, he could have chosen anyone, especially lawyers who would have been much better candidates to dispose of all of his vast amounts of wealth. And they don't know. They can't figure it out. Why did he choose her? And one of the very first things that she has to deal with is a stamp collection. And in the stamp collection, she discovers that there are some forgeries. These are not proper United States Postal Service stamps. There's something wrong with these stamps, clearly, and they have this symbol on them. And from there, a sprawling labyrinth of paranoid chaos takes place in such a short amount of space. It is unbelievable. Thomas Pynchon writes like no one else. Like, he can cram so much information into a paragraph that you have to pick it apart with a pair of tweezers, word by word, to make sense of how much he's trying to convey to you. Like, his writing it's like a hand grenade. You pull the pin and it explodes all over the room in your mind, and then you've got to try to reassemble the hand grenade to make sense of what he's written. Right away, she gets involved with this lawyer who's going to help her dealing with this will. It's funny because, so often in literature, people are described as being handsome or beautiful. That night, the lawyer, Metzger, showed up. He turned out to be so good-looking that Oedipa thought at first somebody up there, were putting her on. It had to be an actor. He stood at her door, behind him the oblong pool shimmering, silent, in the mild diffusion of light from the nighttime sky, saying, "Mrs. Maas," like a reproach. His enormous eyes, lambent, extravagantly lashed, smiled out at her wickedly. She looked around him for reflectors, microphones, camera cabling, but there was only himself and a debonair bottle of French Beaujolais, which he claimed to have smuggled last year into California. This rollicking lawbreaker past the frontier guards. That's a paragraph. So Metzger, the lawyer, this gorgeous lawyer, he turns out to have been an actor. He was a child actor, and now he's a lawyer. They get drunk in this hotel room, and they turn on the television, and they discover that the television is showing one of the movies he was in when he was a child. This book makes me feel really paranoid when I read it. Like, when I read this book the first time and this time, I got really nervous, anxious, paranoid. Like, I began to think that there were secret societies. I started to look at everybody with this, really examining them. Like, is this person I'm talking to, what kind of a secret life is going on behind this facade that they are presenting to me? That's just what happens. Like, nothing is to be taken at face value. Everything has secret layers. And the book gets stranger and stranger and stranger. And Metzger, the lawyer, he has a friend who is a lawyer, but he's decided to become an actor to play a young version of Metzger, the child actor, who has become a lawyer. Like, it's like one of those infinity loops that actor, lawyer, lawyer, actor, actor, lawyer, and it just goes around and around until you're dizzy. And so this poor character, Oedipa, she needs to try to navigate this constantly more confused situation. Pynchon is doing quite a lot with this book. Like, one of the things he does is he plays with the concept of time elapsing. Like at one point, like a bottle of hairspray, one of those old bottles, it falls and it breaks and it goes shooting around the room like a torpedo in a cartoon, you know, it bouncing off the walls. Pew, pew, pew. And it seems to go on for minutes. But I think we all understand that perhaps if you dropped a hairspray bottle, it might shoot across the room, improbably, but it would quickly fall dead on the floor, but not in this book. In this book, it goes on and on. And there are many scenes in this book where the same thing happens. There's a point later in the book where she gets on a bus and she travels to a rooming house to speak to a homeless person to ask him about the validity of one of these stamps. Oh, I forgot to mention. When she discovers these fraudulent United States postal stamps, she discovers that there is a secret society lurking beneath the surface, underground organization of secret mail carriers, operating clandestinely in opposition to the United States Postal Service. So there's, you know, United States Post, and then there is the secret society of postal carriers. You know, she wants to get to the bottom of this. Like, is this true? Is there really an underground collective of people carrying mail? It becomes more and more convoluted. She has a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist keeps advising her. It's like, well, you know, we'd really like to get you on this LSD treatment. She's like, no, I don't want to get on this LSD treatment. Like, well, but you'd be helping us a lot because we need you as a test subject. We've got American housewives, and we've got several of them on this LSD trial, and we need you also to help us with this trial. And she said, no, I don't want to be. And the psychiatrist eventually later, what happens to him? He's shooting at people from a window for some reason. You know, it's like in a movie when you go into the apartment of the crazy person and it's just littered with all kinds of detritus that the crazy person has collected and amassed. And for them, in their version of reality, these things have meaning and they have value. But to the ordinary mind, they don't see any meaning. They don't see any rationale behind this weird collection of assorted stuff. And that's what it's like reading this novel, is that Pynchon just keeps piling on the paranoid, secret worlds that might be lurking beneath the surface. Like Oedipus' husband, originally he was a used car salesman, and he became quite paranoid with his job because people would bring in these used cars, and he would go through these used cars, cleaning them out to resell them. And he just became too overwhelmed with the fact that these people bring in these dirty cars filled with the scraps of their old life, and they just discard it. And it's his job to deal with these collectives of human rubbish. And it became too much for him, and he became a radio DJ, which had its own problems for other reasons. Thomas Pynchon, I think, is one of the most cult authors of all time. Like, there are very few authors who have such a cult-like influence as Pynchon. Maybe J.D. Salinger. And for the same reason, is that Thomas Pynchon didn't have his photograph taken for decades, and nobody knew where he lived. Was he living in Paris? Was he living in London? Nobody knew. He refused to be known. He wouldn't do, it wasn't that he wouldn't do any publicity. He didn't want anyone to know where he was or even what he looked like. He was such a recluse. Where is Thomas Pynchon? It's one way to gain notoriety. Not a bad way if you're an author. Like I've always been pretty romantic about Thomas Pynchon in this. Like, he published his first novel, V, and then he published this. This is his second novel, The Crying of Lot 49. And he disappeared from the world. And I think a lot of people know his most famous novel, Gravity's Rainbow, and he was just gone. Like,
hey, over here, have your picture taken with a reclusive author. Today only, we'll throw in a free autograph.
There's a story about how he was friends with another writer, and they were sharing a cab back home, and he wouldn't tell the other writer, even though they'd spent the evening together drinking in a pub, he wouldn't tell the other writer where he lived. He just told the cab driver to drop him off here, and he would walk for the rest of the way. And when the taxi dropped him off, he waited for it to, his friend in the taxi cab couldn't see where he went to go to his apartment. Like, he was that paranoid, I suppose, about people not knowing where he was. I guess that is really paranoid and not normal, but somehow for me, I think, I can really see getting into that myself. Yeah, the guy speaking to the camera to put the videos onto YouTube thinks that it would be a nice thing to be a recluse. If you're thinking about getting into Thomas Pynchon, or you're curious, I would really recommend this one as your first step, because it has all of that great Pynchon writing and imagination that is equal to almost no other writer, but it's not too long. 183 pages. Even a month ago, Oedipa's next question would have been why, but now she kept silent, waiting as if to be illuminated. "They are stripping from me," she said, subvocally, feeling like a fluttering curtain in a very high window, moving up and then out over the abyss. "They are stripping away one by one my men, my shrink, pursued by Israelis, gone mad, my husband, on LSD, gropes like a child further and further into the rooms and endless rooms of the elaborate candy house of himself, and away, hopelessly away from what has passed. I was hoping forever for love. My one extramarital fella has eloped with a depraved 15-year-old. My best guide back to the Tristero has taken a Brody. Where am I?" So if you'd like to get into Thomas Pynchon and read paragraphs like that, this is the book for you. Okay, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Short one today because got a pile of stuff to deal with. Take care.